Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Erica, and I'm part of the Mojo Networks marketing team. On behalf of our presenter, Sean, and myself, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us for one of our exciting weekly demos. I'd now like to introduce our presenter, Sean Blanton, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Mojo Networks. Today, Sean's going to use the next 30 minutes to discuss and demonstrate how Mojo Networks delivers a more reliable Wi-Fi, as he also takes you through the 6 simple ways to keep your Wi-Fi going strong.
All right, thank you very much, Erica. And thank you to everybody who is joining right now, joining in the future. As Erica mentioned, my name is Sean. I am really excited to talk to you about this topic, in particular because this is a topic in Wi-Fi that is usually brought up because of a stinging question. It's a question that I've asked often and have been asked of. And the question is this: how much time and how much effort do you spend dealing with end users who claim or submit tickets that say the Wi-Fi is crap? This is a question that comes up more often than it should, and it's especially stinging because Wi-Fi is increasingly becoming the primary method of access. And not only that, but in developing and putting out Wi-Fi, more and more devices are connecting, not just corporate issued or school issued devices, but BYOD devices, IoT devices. We are seeing a huge influx of overall connectivity on a medium that, despite many advances, still has issues and can still be unreliable if not implemented correctly. And so that question comes up often, and more than anything, we are focused on the end user, making sure they are happy, making sure they are productive, and that involves keeping our Wi-Fi strong. So today, we're going to be looking at, as Erica mentioned, the 6 simple ways to keep your Wi-Fi going strong. And as you can see, we were putting this topic together, and really the various methods, they live and persist throughout the entire Wi-Fi lifecycle. From start to finish, there are things that we can do to ensure that Wi-Fi is strong and continues to be strong. And so when we talk today, we're really going to look at the 3 major phases: the planning phase, what happens before we get that Wi-Fi out there; the implementation phase, setting up our networks, putting and deploying our access points; and then finally the management phase, everything that comes after, keeping that network going. And as we dive into this, we'll really be using our controller-free cloud-managed architecture as the backdrop. One of the things that we can do holistically with that architecture is separate management and control. This fundamentally empowers access points to operate on their own. It allows us to move the management plane to the cloud, and that allows us to take advantage of the unlimited processing and storage resources overall for better analysis. In short, we can give you more direction and guidance, and your access points can be empowered to operate automatically without inhibition. So let's begin. Let's start with talking about the planning phase. Planning is essential. It is important to audit your environment and determine optimal AP placement. This involves count. This involves model. I'm reminded of a customer that I've worked with and continue to work with. Now, this particular customer, although any given location is not particularly complex, their challenge is in the volume of locations. 800 remote offices worldwide, not just the United States, but all over the world. For them, when they're looking at deploying and about a year and a half ago started a complete refresh cycle, it was absolutely impossible for them to perform on-site surveys for every single location. Not only that, it was very difficult, if not also impossible, to perform on-site surveys even for what they considered basic office types or templates or layouts. It was just too expensive. And in many cases, they'd be unable to get resources to some of these locations. The solution is Mojo Planner. And in particular, what we talk about here is the idea of virtual site surveys. Virtual site surveys that programmatically account for physical properties, they account for people count, access, and security. And all of these things combined give us an exact measure of where devices should be. So let me show you how Mojo Planner works. Now, for those of you who are out there wondering how to get your hands on this, it's easy. Mojo Planner is a free utility. We provide it to our partners, we provide it to our customers. It has a lot of benefits in the planning phase, and actually it can persist, as we'll talk about in just a bit. Now, Mojo Planner is designed to allow me to upload floor plans, as you see I've done here right now. I can draw on top of them. I can get very complex with how I've accounted for various physical properties. For example, brick walls, cement pillars, and glass dividers. But I can go even further, counting doors and also equipment. I can also account for people, application usage, and general properties about how I believe my network to be used at a high capacity, medium, or low, and other such qualities. This allows me to output a report that tells installers exactly where to place devices. But of course, it gives them room to perform slight tweaks during installation to account for unknown aspects, like a light fixture, for example, that was unaccounted for in the original plan. Now, while I can get very precise and very manual in this process, let's look at the auto planning wizard. In this particular case, we choose our model, we determine height of ceiling, and you can see here that we're accounting for the mode of our access point, the protocol, transmit power, antennas, and then down below you can see here, what are we gunning for? Do we want a coverage threshold of, let's say we want it a little bit tighter, we come down to 60. We can incorporate capacity planning, how many users should be accounting for. No matter what I choose, by clicking plan, it actually auto-populates not just the number of access points, but it places it for me automatically. Here you can see it's placed it in the conference room. It's accounted for the best possible placement, but if I felt that there were better places, for example, more centrally located, I could move it and actually refresh the look and feel. I can take readings, adjust the properties of the device, and I can help to understand exactly where this device should be. Clicking calculate gives me that new look. The output of this particular software gives me two things. Number one, it provides me with a report. But number two, it also gives me what we call an SPM file. And that file can be uploaded into Mojo Wireless Manager, as we'll go in just a bit. And in doing so, my AP placements will take into account the same physical properties. And I'll be able to perform location tracking services and adjust my placements virtually with the same level of accuracy. So as we move out of the planning phase and we start to look at the implementation phase, here you can see the bulk of our actions to ensure reliable Wi-Fi really come into play. In the big picture, the implementation phase is really about developing the automatic responses to the most common Wi-Fi issues. What we want to achieve is a system that keeps itself healthy for the vast majority of users. If you consider the 80-20 rule, 80% of the issues are going to be addressed through these particular implementations. And through our management phase, we'll cover the other 20. As you can see, it really has a full look. Number one, really important to enable full spectrum scanning. This gives us sight into every single detail in the wireless spectrum and is going to help inform our second two sessions, enabling proactive radio frequency monitoring and setting our predefined bandwidth lanes, in particular for guest network. So let's take a look at how this can be implemented. As I dive into the Mojo Cloud, I'm going to hop into, in particular, Mojo Wireless Manager. As I mentioned, the most important aspect, the first aspect, is to start with the right access point. The right access point is going to give me the visibility that I need in order to perform the functions of keeping my Wi-Fi reliable. When we come into our configuration, we can see that we're really looking at two aspects of the network, the access point and the network. So let's start with the access point. Fundamentally, the way for me to get access to information about our spectrum comes from off-channel scanning. Really short, off-channel scanning means that an access point is statically sitting on a single channel per radio. That channel is the service channel. It's the channel over which Wi-Fi clients communicate and transmit data. every other channel in the spectrum is considered off service. And these off service channels, we need to scan them. If we scan them, we can see what's happening on them. When we see that, we can start to actually put our RF and QoS properties into play. There's two ways to accomplish this. One way is to use background scanning. Now, background scanning means that the access point will actually hop periodically onto these off-service channels and run scans. Traditionally, every 10 seconds, that radio will jump to an off-service channel for 100 milliseconds, hopping back to the service channel for 10 seconds and repeating the process. And it does this over and over and over again on the 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz radio. Now, background scanning is a really great option for dual radio devices, but it has its drawbacks. Number one, it does elongate the scan time and it can inhibit the ability of our performance, as well as other aspects like troubleshooting and security. But more importantly, if you are administrating an organization, administrating a network that has a lot of high capacity applications, voice and video in particular, background scanning may not be an option for you because it can actively disrupt and even drop voice calls and video streams. So we look to a tri-radio device. And at Mojo, our C130 is just that device. Each access radio is dedicated to access. And our third radio, a 2x2 11AC radio, is dedicated to scanning. This radio hops from channel to channel consistently and persistently. It doesn't stop. And it doesn't have to take breaks to allow for access clients to transmit data. This gives us significantly more visibility, and it gives us a wide breadth because we're getting more real-time information. And this is going to empower our RF monitoring and our QoS properties. So let's take a look at those elements. Those elements are really looked at more consistently within our SSID profiles, our network profile. As I hop into here, you can see that among other properties, traffic shaping and RF optimization down below, this is where I really start to empower my net access points to operate on their own. And you can see there's a lot of options that we have to choose from. Collectively, this series of techniques and tools are referred to as Mojo Air. And you can read about Mojo Air on our website and watch some videos. We'll have other talks about it. But for now, as you can see here, options like smart load balancing and band steering. These are activities that are going to ensure that the load is distributed across access points and on an access point distributed across radios. It's also going to give us the ability to start impacting clients. Smart steering, for example, addresses the sticky client problem. And this is a big problem when it comes to delivering reliable Wi-Fi. For as much as someone might say, your Wi-Fi is crap, we know that very often the client is having the inability to connect or stay connected. And a sticky client will connect to the first available access point, and despite moving perhaps closer to a second access point, will remain connected to the first. The farther away they are, the slower their effective data rate, slowing their own processes down, as well as others that are on that access point. This is a big problem. So smart steering allows our radios to dynamically disconnect that client, prevent it from sticking to the original AP, allowing it to hop to the new access point, even if it is unwilling to make that decision itself. And on and on. There are a number of options that we can implement to help optimize the RF, the wireless transmission, as well as the resources of the radio itself. And when we look at traffic shaping, here we have an opportunity to take a little bit of initiative. Guest networks are, in most cases, meant for short-term use by low bandwidth clients. This often means that they're meant for low bandwidth applications as well, email and web surfing. You may be a K-12 or a university supporting networks for your students, in particular their own personal devices. Low bandwidth applications, checking mail, checking social media. And enterprises, it's a similar aspect, plus vendors coming in to give presentations. As a result, we can actually implement controls around bandwidth usage. And in doing so, we can ensure that these networks, which are not critical to the business, but important nonetheless, are not overtaking our trusted or our primary network. So there's two ways to determine guest network QoS. Simple math will determine how much we need to give to our guests. In some cases, we can look at total bandwidth minus historical business unit usage gets us our guest. If we know that in a given office, we have 10 megs coming into the particular location, and historically speaking, we can see that we're using anywhere from 6 to 7 megs on a regular basis, then we can comfortably apply 1, 2, even 3 megs to our guest network by restricting upload and download bandwidth. And this will ensure that no matter how loaded our guest network becomes, if someone were to abuse that usage by running high bandwidth applications, we can ensure that they will never overtake the critical network. Another aspect to control this is to enable per user bandwidth controls. Now, I've been monitoring Wi-Fi for some time, and I know that even now, even delivering a webinar over a medium like GoToMeeting, I am not exceeding 100 kilobits per second. Most average web surfing and email usage is well below that threshold. So implementing these types of restrictions to the user will ensure that no single user will actively overtake other users on the network, say by running a Netflix video or a YouTube video. This is another way to help control usage for guest networks. Number one, to ensure that it doesn't overtake the main network, but number two, to ensure that it doesn't overtake other users on that network. And so finally, we look at the management phase. Our networks are out there. We've planned for placement, coverage, capacity. We've implemented our networks and really thought critically about how they're going to be used. And we've empowered our access points to respond to the vast majority of issues out there so that we don't have to. But nevertheless, we need to make sure that we can see what's going on. And if something arises, if something goes beyond level 1 support or the ability of our access points to respond automatically, we need to have graphical troubleshooting tools to speed up root cause analysis, to tackle those persistent issues and get them under control so we can keep our Wi-Fi reliable. The problem is that there are a lot of times when active participation is needed to resolve these issues. And so visibility gives us the solution. We want to know what's going on in the clearest way possible. We can pick out the inconsistencies and we can quickly determine root cause. So let's take a look. We're going to start in Mojo Wireless Manager and we're going to hop over to our dashboard. Now, as you can see here, this particular dashboard, this is my common everyday checkout dashboard. I've worked with customers, and in particular, a university comes to mind that had a very specific tier for support. Level 1 support, made up primarily of junior staff. They were taking the bulk of tickets. They were seeing these responses out there. Level 2 would get involved when level 1 exhausted their options. In particular, did you turn it off and on again? And in some cases, having the ability to actively interact with the access point, perhaps even rebooting it if absolutely necessary. This was not ideal, but a tool in their arsenal should they need that. And this was a dashboard that was really representative of what that team needed to see. How many access points are up, are any down? What is my general data transfer rate, my association trends, and transfer trends? Looking here at both the real-time and the historical view can be very telling. You can see here that my active AP trends is a very steady line, which is good. This is what we want. But if I take a look back over time, I can actually see where anomalies are appearing. These drops where my access points are appearing to be inactive. I can zoom in and I can really start to figure out when it occurred, how many were active, or in this case, over a longer period of time, inactive. This is critical for longer term observation because it helps me to start correlating certain activities to determine a root cause. If I take a step back and look at my association trends, for example, at this present moment, this is very normal. As the day starts, my associations rise as people are coming into the office. But again, I can take a look back historically, and you can see that trends are appearing Monday through Friday, weekend, Monday through Friday, weekend. And this is really normal. But in cases where something breaks from the norm, we need to understand why that is. And having these various dashboards and having the ability to customize them, build them to your need, gives you that visibility quickly, and it helps you to really take the next step, which is getting involved in that level 2 or even level 3 activity. And when it does come to that, we don't want to waste time going down the troubleshooting rabbit hole. As we mentioned, not every issue is resolved with a simple turn it off and turn it on again. The same customer I was just talking to is challenged by this. And level 1 just doesn't have the expertise to tackle larger issues. This, in turn, causes pain for the end users, because in some cases, they might feel like they're just being put through the motions. And in worst cases, that level 2 or even level 3 support staff has to go through the same steps, has to recreate the issue. And if they can't, the issue persists, and we have a very unhappy user. How do we solve this? Well, we do that with a tool we call Mojo Packets. Mojo Packets is a graphical packet analyzer. It's hosted in the cloud, so it's taking advantage of that unlimited resource and storage capabilities to take my trace and to give me direction. You can see here I have a couple of sample cases. I'm going to hop into a case study here. Now, even before I'm looking at the trace, Packets is looking at the entirety of what was captured, analyzing what it's seen, and providing me with an overview. Right away, I know exactly where I need to begin. Of the 5 clients picked up in this particular trace, very clearly, I have an issue. That one bad client, I can see exactly which failures that client is seeing. You don't need to sift through the details to figure this out. We can see that this particular client is facing a number of issues: association failures, EPL failures. This is already starting to paint the picture, and it's helping me to understand what's going on before I even pull back the layers. This is what helps level 1 tackle more complex problems, because at this point, even if they're unable to solve the problem themselves, they're informing level 2 with much greater accuracy. Level 2 takes it to the next level. I hop into the trace itself, and I start to pull back the onion layers, and I start to really look at what's going on. Packets is visualizing the trace. It's giving me a look at what should be, and it's clearly identifying what should not be. I should be seeing this, a steady data line, but I'm not. As I start to zoom in, I can see where I have dips. Even certain elements are calling my name: reassociation requests, responses, deauthentication. These particular packets are telling me a story, and I'm combining this with the notes from level 1. In particular, this particular client is at their desk. They are trying to stream music while they do their work. This is allowed by company policy, but they keep disconnecting. Their music stream keeps getting disturbed, and this is causing them a lot of pain. They are not moving, yet the trace is very clearly showing me that we have authentication and reassociation responses. It's roaming, but the client is stationary. And now I have a very clear idea of not just what the problem is, what the solution is. In this particular case, looking at the client device, looking at the driver, potentially updating that driver, or making sure that that particular client is positioned physically closer to a single access point, the client doesn't get confused. So we've talked a lot about a lot of different things today. So in summary, as we close out our session today, 6 simple ways to keep your Wi-Fi going strong. This is an increasingly important, essential activity, and it really lives throughout the entire Wi-Fi lifecycle. When we are planning, performing a site survey is essential, but it can be costly. So utilizing a virtual site survey tool like Mojo Planner gives me the ability to programmatically determine the precise location, planned with very specific details, so that I'm setting my Wi-Fi network up for success. As I implement that network, I have to be very mindful of full spectrum scanning. Am I getting the visibility that I need to empower my automatic responses in the form of RF optimization and traffic shaping? And if I'm not, how can I be sure to get that information? This is where you look at tri-radio devices like our C130, which with its 2x2 11AC third radio, it is picking up just about all wireless traffic it can see, informing the access point so that it can respond quickly, but also accurately to what it's seeing, as opposed to making guesses or being unable to respond with lack of information. By managing radio resources, by watching the air, and by thinking critically about how networks will be used, I can set my networks up to respond to the vast majority of issues that clients face. And then when I'm finished, I want to make sure that I have the visibility that I need so that on a regular basis, I can be sure that the network is going strong. And if it's not, if I need to react, not only do I have the broad picture of what's going on, but I have the tools that I need to dive deep to really get a clear picture so that my time to resolution is fast